Hardcore Zombie here, coming at you with a somewhat accurate build guide and experience to Last Epoch Harbinger League. I hope you enjoy the overall build guide, and this build guide is meant for beginners in the like, or people that just want to have decent good laugh and have some fun. So I hope you enjoy the video, and let's get started on with our gear and our passive troops. This is the gear and the passive section for this build guide. For the Boon Fire Necromancer build. Here's our first example. So we're just gonna walk around just to show what happens. If it does pop off. But that being said, see, just happened. So your bone golem will do a little bit of an explosion, and any of your minions that are within that explosion will die. And then you have to resummon them. It is very important to remember that this build is not an AFK minion build. You always have to resummon your minions. And overall, with how Last Epoch plays, you're always better off to resummon your minions anyways, because you gain better benefit. Anyways, moving on to the gear. This is from level 88 going into early empowered monoliths. So the main thing you want to look for doesn't really matter like what type of weapon you have. Overall, you're wanting to look for fire penetration and minion fire penetration, as well as ways to mitigate your high mana cost and sustain your mana. A little bit of luxury with ward is also nice, with having some mana spent as ward. Similarly, with our offhand catalyst, instead of going for a two-handed weapon, just so we can fill out our stats a little bit better. Overall, this is what I would relatively recommend for your offhand. You want to look for something with ward retention and ward per second at least, and maybe a little bit of intelligence for your implicits. Now this helmet here is a little bit special. I was able to craft this helmet with the +4 to bone golem with the minion armor. Don't be expecting to end up getting something this nice. I just ended up getting lucky, and it's been a really nice piece of gear, and I haven't really needed to swap it up too much. I've swapped up the helmet maybe twice. Now moving on to the body armor. Overall, you want to keep the same theme of scaling your fire damage where you can, your intelligence to scale your mana and your damage overall. Percentage health later on in the game, it's very important to have it over flat health, since overall percent health will give you more overall hit points. Now the necklace isn't anything special. The only thing I really wanted for it was some less damage over time taken. Other than that, it's pretty basic stuff. Rings are pretty basic too. Pretty basic belt. Now the two main things that I've looked for and that I've really paid attention to throughout playing the campaign and the game overall is the main unique that would be recommended for this build is the ambitions of an erased acolyte, just for the two main passives of the +1 to the acolyte skills, and for the extra ward that it does give you for when allies or your minions die. keep in mind this is on a 2-second cooldown. And by far, I got lucky with my rolls to get the +1 to Skeletal Mage. Don't expect that you're gonna get something like this right off the gate. Even just the basic one will do you fine. Overall, with this ring here, same type of thing. I kind of found it early on into Monoliths, and I just decided to use it just for the percentage health and mana on it. The other bonus effects are pretty nice, however. Now moving on to our idols. We mostly want to focus on increasing our minion fire damage. Any extra stats that you really want overall is just like some percentage health or something like that, or even some nice flat health is always a good option. And overall, if you can find less damage overtaken, you should probably have a little bit of it at least. And now moving over here, we just have a little bit of critical strike for our minions, but it doesn't really matter all that much. And then as you can see, we also want to look for something that will help us increase our volatile zombies' damage and explosion area. Again, the less damage taken over time is always good. The health regen isn't really too bad. And then this here was just a generic one that I found that had good flat minion fire damage, but it wasn't too bad. Moving on to our active skill tree. To start off with, for summon Bone Golem, we want to prioritize getting to Bone Kindling as soon as possible, along with some extra fire damage scaling from these two nodes over here. And then we want to go down over here to start building out some defenses for our Bone Golem as well, with some extra health and armor, some movement speed, and some health gained on hit, as well as additional health scaling from our vitality for our Bone Golem. And then finally, wrap it up with Tower of Bones and Fragments of the Fallen. These nodes over here are extra from my helmet. Moving on to our summoned skeletons, we want to head down to Mindcatcher as soon as possible to gain a little bit of mana back from when our skeletons do die. Moving on, we want to increase the maximum number of skeletons that we can summon, and then going down to Unholy Rage yet again to increase the maximum number of skeletons that we can summon. Follow that up with Fire Arrow and at least getting 1 point into multi-shot, just because of the fact that if you grab any extra points, these skeleton archers will attack slower. Keep that in mind. And then we want to grab Lone Guardian to increase the maximum number of our skeleton archers and limiting our skeleton warrior to 1. And then moving on from here, if you want, you can grab Marrow Top and at least 1 point into the empty graves to make summoning your skeletons a little bit easier, since you'll be summoning 2 skeletons at once instead of just 1 by default. Moving on to Necrotic Conviction, at least getting 3 points, so we can gain access to Bone Armor, and then we yet again grab another point into Bone Share, so we gain access to Bone Armor for ourselves as well as our minions. Moving on to our main damage skill for this build. We first want to start off with grabbing our utility in the form of Vital Ward, which when our zombies do blow up and kill things, they do give us ward back. Moving on from there, at any point, grab Forceful Commander, follow that up with going down towards Shepherd of Thralls, gaining access to our Skeleton Vanguard, which is another minion that we can have to add to our armor. And then from there, late onto the campaign, early into the end game, we want to head down towards flammable to make sure that we convert any of our poison damage to fire damage and any of our poison chance to ignite chance. Now let's take a look at our summon skill, grenade skill. We start with prioritizing heading over to Pyromancers, and then follow that up with getting Inferno, so we remove the regular mages entirely, so we're only getting our Pyromancers. And then we want to get Flame Rat after that and max that out for the maximum amount of damage that we can deal, because 40% fire penetration with Ignite is great. And then moving on from there, we want to head up over here to get our attack speed and cast speed, and then get some frenzy. Follow that up with the most important node for this tree, Forbidden Arcanum, which helps us yet increase our damage a little bit further from scaling our mana. And then any extra points you may have, you might want to invest a little bit into melee and area of effect and extra projectiles, and maybe a little bit of spell damage on top of that. Moving on to our final skill for this build, the self-cast Infernal Shade. We first want to start off with heading towards Fleeting Shade, and then follow that up with going up towards Influence and getting Baneful to increase our fire penetration with Ignite by 40%. And then from there, we want to head down towards Ignition, at least getting 3 points to gain access to Wildfires, which increases our damage a little bit further. And then finally, we want to go for Combustion. Anything else after this is technically extra. Even over here, like extra explosion damage in areas, extra as well. A little bit of crit and reduced duration helps for us with casting. But I chose to take my extra point and put it into Crackling Flames for a little bit of increased duration. Let's now move on to our passive skill tree and our points that we invest for our skills. Let's start off with the passive tree. Now with Acolyte, you could go for Mania of Mortality, but I didn't really opt to invest any extra into the Acolyte tree because I needed to spend my points elsewhere. But overall, if you can't find the recommended unique, these two nodes at the bottom of the Acolyte tree do help a little bit with being able to gain a little bit extra ward without needing the unique for this build. Now moving on to the Necromancer, to the Necromancer tree, we want to start with taking any stuff relating to ward. As you can see here, we took our 5 into Reconciliation Souls, we took our 5 into Life Drinker, heading over to Soul Drinker to gain even more ward. And then as we're going further on, we need to be able to increase our minion fire damage as much as possible. So then we also take Moonlight Fire, so then we can also go into Rite of Undeath to give ourselves extra elemental resistances and extra elemental damage for our minions. This part here up at the top is purely for just grabbing the intelligence, a little bit of critical strike chance. it's okay. It's nothing really to worry about. We just go up here, and then we go over to River of Bones. We take our required number of nodes to get into Heresy, which we want to max out for our intelligence. And then down here to start off with, I went with scaling a little bit of minion health and a little bit of minion armor. The rest of the stuff over here, like Risen Army or Elixir of Hunger, doesn't really help us out too much, since those are also meant for other types of builds, such as the Lich, such as doing Lich minions, and the like. The main thing that might be a little bit different to some of you is the fact that there's a little bit of points in everything. However, early on, before you do start really scaling your minion fire damage, having a little bit of fire damage and ignite chance for yourself is great, especially if you do plan on doing a self-cast for Infernal Shade. The last point we take in here is a Cultist Mind, mainly to scale our mana. If you do wish to, you could add more points to this, but I wouldn't really overall recommend it, since we do go over to the Lich early to gain a little bit of mana regen and more intelligence. Alright, let's get into this empowered monolith. Just go ahead, pick any monolith you want, doesn't really matter. This build is relatively safe. Overall, also with the campaign, I didn't have too much trouble with this build overall. Mana has always been an issue with this build. Like pretty much any game, you can never have enough mana. That being said, the best way possible to scale your mana for this build is to make sure you are maxing out your intelligence on your skill tree as much as possible. But as you can see, we're pretty much frolicking through the flowers here, and everything's dying, everything's exploding, and we're having a lot of fun. Your main source of gaining gold on this build comes from your Volatile Zombie. The Volatile Zombie provides so much gold for your build that you're easily sitting at 1,000 gold without trying, and when you're really casting your abilities, you can reach up to 2,000 and sometimes up to even 3,000 more. However, you need to make sure that the movement speed isn't too crazy, just because of the fact your minions are going to be slower than you most of the time. And you always want your minions to go in front of you when you're trying to fight the enemies. But as you see, we generally want to cast Infernal Shade first, followed up by Volatile Zombies to maximize our damage and our monoliths. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the build. Going into early corruption and early empowered monoliths hasn't been nearly as scary as I thought it would be, and overall I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I am gonna try and push the build as far as I can, just for the fun of it, because I have personally enjoyed the build a heck of a lot, and I wanted to be able to share it with people to see if it can help you guys out, to give you a better idea on how to go about building your own build and making your own decisions when it comes to your characters. And there's also a thing of note when it comes to Infernal Shade. Infernal Shade can be cast. With Volatile Zombie as a trigger suit. However, I much preferred going through and doing a self-casting version just for the fact that we get extra explosions, because who doesn't like seeing everything on the screen we want? But yeah, overall, this build is a lot of fun to play. This build is relatively safe. As long as you're not walking directly into a slam or a big AoE attack, you're pretty much fine. This is hardcore viable, as long as you make sure you're getting your health. You're getting your health on your gear at all times, and making sure to scale your damage appropriately. But overall, you want to prioritize getting as much health as possible. So when you are playing hardcore, you don't die. Because in hardcore, there's no such thing as dying. There's such a thing called try, and try again. And keep trying, or just die trying. One of the two, but you know. That's just how it goes with these types of games. But overall, this build is really fun for monoliths and mapping in general. It's a really fun time, and I hope you enjoy it and you find it fun as well. So just give it a try and see if you like it. In the next section, we'll be showcasing how this build does against the map boss. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for. Will my build survive against this boss? I guess we'll have to find out. And see if this build is as good as I say it is. But either way, live or die, all that matters is that when you play video games, you play them to have fun, am I right? Anyways, let's continue on with this. Overall, with this game, the main thing that I really have liked about it is that virtually every single class has some type of minion build. Even the archers have a minion build. Like, most games don't have that, right? Ooh, we gotta be a little bit careful there when he does his little water spray. And we gotta really watch out for those little fiery things and everything that's happening on screen. And oh my god, I don't Willem is dead. Somebody help! Oh wait, my word is still up, so we're okay. Like I said, at least 2,000 more minimum. But we're still kind of walking around here. We don't really have any movement skills to speak of, which is the major weakness of this build, is you have basically normal mobility instead of the evade mechanic. But overall, for this Harbinger patch, and for Last Epoch in the game, I'm been happy with this build so far. And to be honest, I'm a little bit panicked because yes, I'm recording myself on camera, but you know, that's just how it is when you want to talk and talk about things as you try not to die. What? That's all the fun of it, right? But, you know, well, we're getting low on mana here. As I said, this build does have mana problems, but we might be able to live through this. because we have our stuff up. Oh my god. Yes, do the stupid blue thing again. Let's grab a potion. Ooh. What did I even bother grabbing that potion? I just instantly get lost my own. I'm not even bothering. And as you saw, these bosses in these types of games can be pretty hard, especially when you're building out corruption. But anyway, this has been my build guide for Last Epoch Harbinger League for the Boomfire Necromancer. I hope you've enjoyed, and if you have any feedback or any comments, please leave them down below. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Peace. I'm out of here. Until next time, try to die less.